Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Robo Celestial here with a new video for you. Welcome to What If All Might Was Deku's dad. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. Welcome to this new video and what if series, which you could tell from the title is called What If All Might Was Deku's dad. But his quirk also makes it easier for him to call upon One for All and transfer the power from one part of his body to another much faster with less concentration. Like in the series, Izuku can use 5% of One for All off the bat, but with his quirk he's able to increase his durability so he can use more power, and with all his training he's increased his multiplier from 0.5 to 2, meaning he can use 10% of One for All without hurting himself and even go a little higher in short bursts. During the last month, Izuku does combat training with All Might and actually increases his limit from 10 to 11% and has also started working on flowing One for All throughout his whole body, though he's only practiced that for the last few days, but his control is far better than it was in canon by this time, and he is far more ready for the UA entrance exam. On the day of UA's entrance exam, as Izuku is walking into the lecture hall, Bakugo, who is walking behind him, starts to berate and insult him. Deku, you damn nerd, what are you doing here? Or looking to kill yourself or something? Make sure you don't get in my way or I'll crush you, got it? But thanks to All Might's added influence, Izuku has grown to be less nervous and knows it's better to ignore Bakugo, which he does as he continues to walk, which frustrates Bakugo enough to shoulder check Izuku, almost making him trip, but he actives One for All 2% to quickly place a leg in front of him and regain his balance, which Bakugo sees and comments, I heard a rumor you got a quirk, but I don't see it, you've just been training. You might as well go home, you're not getting into UA without a quirk. And with that, Bakugo leaves with Izuku standing there. After a second of standing there, a girl walks up to Izuku saying, hey, I saw how you kept yourself from falling, that was kind of cool, you have good reflexes. What was that spiky hair guy's problem trying to knock you over? That wasn't nice. I hope you know not everyone here is like that, at least not me. Izuku, who is still nervous to talk to girls, just keeps nodding his head for yes until the girl walks away into the lecture hall with Izuku following not long after. In the lecture hall, President Mike explains the rules of the practical exam like he does in canon, and everything else is pretty much the same until at Izuku's test site when the exam begins. Unlike what happened originally, Izuku isn't left behind. In fact, he's one of the first to make it through the gate. As soon as he does, using only 7% of One for All, Izuku takes out 3 one-point robots immediately and continues to run around taking out a large amounts of robots during the majority of the exam. But when the 0-point bot appears, everyone starts to run away. Izuku sees Uraraka trapped under a large piece of rubble as the 0-point bot is moving closer, and Izuku instantly powers up to 11% of One for All, making it to Uraraka in no time, and easily lifts the rubble off of her and quickly gets her away from the robot. But right after he does this, the exam ends and Recovery Girl arrives to help anyone who's injured. Once Uraraka gets healed, she thanks Izuku and they go their separate ways, with Izuku feeling much more pleased with his performance this time around. About a week passes before a letter from UA arrives, but in the meantime All Might is around, and while he does know the outcome of the exam, he does keep it hidden until Izuku's acceptance letter to UA arrives. Instead of a hologram All Might telling Izuku that he got in, he's told by All Might in person right when he walks through the door with the letter. All Might also mentions that he's the newest faculty member at UA, which does surprise Izuku and Co, but All Might then tells his son that he's immensely proud of him for not only passing but for getting the highest score out of anyone with 7 villain points and 25 rescue points for a total of 92 points. Izuku is blown away that he got the highest score, and Inko hugs Izuku congratulating him, but All Might then states, now Izuku, this is only your first step to becoming a hero. Don't let your overwhelming success give you a big ego, there's still much left for you to learn. Understand? Izuku smiles and nods his head in agreement, promising to keep working hard no matter what, which makes All Might smile. When he suddenly remembers something important and says, oh, by the way, Izuku, you know that girl you told us about? The one you met before the exam and saved during it? Well, I heard her name was Ochako Uraraka and she passed the entrance exam as well. She'll also be in the same class as yours too. I figured you'd love to know that you'll get to see her again, considering you talked about her so much. Izuku gets incredibly embarrassed and flustered by All Might's statement and tries to act like he has no idea what his father is talking about, but he's doing a very poor job at that. All Might just laughs and hugs his son, after which the two of them start getting everything ready for the first day at UA, including coming up with ideas for Izuku's hero costume. When he opens the door, he sees Bakugo and a student named Ada arguing with one another. After a couple of seconds, Bakugo notices Izuku and jumps up from his chair shouting, Deku, you damn nerd, not only did you have the nerve to join UA, but you had the nerve to beat me. How is that even possible? You must have cheated. Tell me right now, you quirkless loser. Everyone in the classroom looks at Izuku, realizing he's the one who got the highest score in the practical exam, but are confused due to Bakugo saying he's quirkless. Izuku replies, I was a late bloomer, you know that, Kaken. I do have a quirk, it just took a while to appear. After hearing Izuku's reply, the class isn't confused but are surprised that he was a late bloomer. Bakugo, though, is clearly angered by this and gets ready to blow Izuku up, but before he can, Ida walks up to Izuku and introduces himself. Hello, I am Tenya Ida, it's a pleasure to meet you. I saw you fight during the practical exam and I'm proud to be a fellow student alongside someone like you. Izuku awkwardly thanks Ida for regarding him so highly and tries to introduce himself when Uraraka walks up behind him happily saying, It's you, I was hoping I would see you again. I can't thank you enough for saving me during the exam. I owe you one. Izuku blushes and nervously tells Uraraka that it was no trouble at all and that it was the right thing to do. They then have a very short conversation with Izuku being nervous for most of it when a man in a sleeping bag shows up and interrupts them by saying, If you're here to make friends, then I suggest you leave. Once everyone stops talking and looks at the man, he stands up and introduces himself. It took you all way too long to quiet down. This won't work if that's how you're all going to be. I'm Shota Aizawa, but call me Mr. Aizawa and I'm your teacher. Everyone in the class is a little surprised, but Mr. Aizawa ignores them and pulls a gym uniform out of his sleeping bag, telling them, Now let's not waste any more time. Put these on and head outside, we got something important to do. Everyone leaves the classroom and once they get changed into their gym outfits and head outside, where Mr. Aizawa informs them that they'll be doing a quirk assessment test. The class is a little confused by this and Uraraka mentions that they'll miss orientation, but Aizawa replies, If you really want to make the big leagues, then you can't waste your time on pointless ceremonies. Here at UA we aren't tethered to tradition, which allows me to run this class however I want. Mr. Aizawa continues, You've been taking standardized tests for as long as you've been in school, but today you'll get to use your quirks for a physical exam. Aizawa then asks Izuku, since he got the highest score in the practical exam, to throw a ball using his quirk, which he does, getting about 197.5 meters using 11% of one for all throughout his whole arm, showing that he does in fact have a quirk, which infuriates Bakugo. But the class, after seeing it, gets excited that they can use their quirks when Aizawa snaps at them. So you think this is going to be fun? You only have 3 years here to become a hero. It's not all going to be fun and games. Today you'll compete in 8 physical tests to gauge your overall potential, and whoever comes in last will be expelled immediately. Everyone is shocked when they hear this, and Uraraka protests, stating that it's not fair for Aizawa to do that, with Izuku backing her up slightly, but Mr. Aizawa replies, I told you I get to run this class however I want, and if any of you have a problem with it, then you can just leave. This is to see if you're cut out to be here. UA will throw multiple hardships at you and the world will be even worse when you're a pro. This test is nothing, show me it's no mistake that you're here and go beyond plus ultra style. After a few seconds of thinking, the whole class gets determined looks on their faces, and Aizawa in response smiles, saying, Okay, then let's get started. And with that, the quirk assessment test begins, starting with the 50-meter dash. No scores really change except for Izuku, who gets a time of 3.9 seconds, and as you can guess, every other score for Izuku will be much better than it was originally, except for the ball throw, because he was only using 11%, but other than that there's no reason to really focus too much on the tests. And in the end, Izuku ends up getting the 6th highest score, thanks to his quirk Spartan Boost and One for All, increasing all his physical abilities to the point where even if he didn't have insane scores, he was able to get a pretty decent overall score. And it does help that Izuku used a little of full cow during certain tests like the sit-ups and went up to 12% and 13% for short periods, so he did very well. Also, as a reminder, Izuku's quirk Spartan Boost increases his body's abilities like speed, strength, durability, etc. by 2 times as of now, which helps him to handle more of One for All. Without using it, Izuku can only use a little over 5%, and it also helps him to add extra power for short periods of time and makes it easier for him to move the power throughout into different parts of his body. But he can use Spartan Boost on its own just like he can use One for All by itself. But let's move on. Naturally, because of Izuku's score, a lot of the students would move down by 1 spot, meaning Mineta is in last, but Aizawa doesn't expel him or anyone else because he does see potential in all of them and tells them that it was logical deception to make them try harder. However, Aizawa does mention that if any of them step out of line or show signs of not being cut out for UA, then he won't hesitate to expel them. He then ends the class and walks away, but he runs into All Might and has a conversation with him, though it's pretty normal, so it's not very important. At the end of the first day of UA, Izuku is walking out of the main building when Ida and Uraraka both catch up to him and properly introduce themselves to one another, and as they all walk to the station together, Ida asks, Izuku, if you don't mind me asking, what is with Bakugo and his attitude towards you? It seemed like he was ready to attack you at any moment. Izuku replies, well, remember how I said I was a late bloomer with my quirk? It's probably that, combined with the fact that he thinks I'm a loser, which is why he calls me Deku, and he hates that it seems like I'm trying to show him up. He's very competitive. Uraraka replies. It just seems like he's full of himself, but I can't believe you got your quirk late. That's crazy. You're already so strong, and I have to admit I like the name Deku. It'd be a great hero name, plus it's kind of cute. Izuku blushing responds. Well, I don't know about that, but if you want you can call me Deku. Ada interjects, asking why Izuku is okay with Uraraka calling him that if it's an insult, which isn't really answered, and the three new friends head to the station, ending the first day at UA. Nothing else really important happens, so we'll skip to the next day. The day of combat training, but first, deep dive ad. Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called Anime Theory. Anime Theory mainly focuses on a large variety of mind-boggling anime theories. If you are interested in content like this, please go check the description below or click the eye icon in the top right corner. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. The day starts pretty uneventful, but when the bell rings, All Might enters the classroom like a hero, and everyone in the class is excited. Except for Izuku, who is thinking to himself, come on dad, you don't have much time, stop showboating. Once All Might gets to the small podium, he announces that they'll be doing combat practice and tells everyone to get changed into their hero costumes, which everyone is happy to do as they all leave for the locker rooms to get changed. Outside at Ground Beta, everyone arrives wearing their hero costumes, which are all pretty much the same except for Izuku, whose costume looks less homemade and more like an in-between version of his first and second costume, and the only things missing are the weird bunny ear mask and the other little face mask. He doesn't have these this time around because All Might shot it all down. Once everyone has settled down, All Might explains the rules for the exercise and splits everyone up into teams of 2 and randomly picks the matchups, which are all exactly the same as in canon, with the first match being Team Izuku and Uraraka as the heroes against Team Bakugo and Eda as the villains. Right before the match starts, Izuku and Uraraka stand outside of the building trying to come up with a plan when Uraraka notices that Izuku seems a little nervous and asks him what's wrong. Izuku answers, "Don't worry, I'll be fine, I'm just thinking we need to be cautious of our opponents, especially Bakugo. I've known him ever since we were kids, and he's incredible when it comes to things like this, even though he is a bit of a jerk, but that just means I have to be better. I refuse to lose this knot to him. This time I'm winning." Uraraka smiles and replies, "I see, so you're planning on putting your foot down to finally face and beat your lifelong rival? That's so cool." Izuku blushes and continues to talk about a plan with Uraraka. Now, one thing I would like to add is to keep in mind that this Izuku isn't overly nervous thanks to All Might's extra influence, but he's still Izuku, nothing we can do about that. After a minute goes by, the combat exercise officially starts, and once it does, Izuku and Uraraka sneak through a window and move around the building, with Izuku having Spartan Boost active while doing so, when suddenly Bakugo jumps out from around a corner and uses an explosion, but Izuku uses 11% of one for all in his legs to get him and Uraraka out of the way before they get hit by the attack, and when Kaken sees this, he yells, "You damn nerd, stop being a coward and face me head on." Bakugo rushes forward and throws a big right hook, but Izuku grabs his arm and, using a 2x boost to his strength, throws Bakugo over his shoulder and slams him onto the ground hard, knocking the wind right out of him. Bakugo, taking some time to get up from the throw, turns to Deku and asks, "What the hell was that? How is a weakling like you able to do that?" Izuku answers, "Because I've studied you, I know you always start a fight with a right hook. I'm not a weakling anymore, Kaken. I'll fight you head on and win. Do you hear me? From this point on, I won't let you walk all over me." Deku is now the name of a hero, not a loser. Uraraka looks at Izuku and smiles, giving him a thumbs up when Izuku tells her to go on ahead without him, which she does, and once Bakugo fully gets back on his feet, he glares at Izuku and yells, "Ever since your stupid stepdad and quirk came along, you've been acting so confident. I'm going to show you that means nothing. I'll obliterate you." After saying this, Bakugo charges forward, firing explosion after explosion, shaking the whole building, while Izuku uses 11% in his legs to dodge all of them. Bakugo then fires a massive blast from one of his gauntlets, nearly destroying an entire floor of the building, but it does knock Izuku into a wall, hurting him slightly. As Deku is getting up, Bakugo leaps forward using explosions to pick up speed and punches him in the gut, but Izuku counters by using 11% in his arm to deliver a punch to Bakugo square in the face, knocking him away. After, they both stare each other down while catching their breaths, but the silence is broken when Bakugo screams, "You think you're so damn great, don't you? Admit it, you've always looked down on me like I was some weakling, and now that you have a quirk, I bet you're excited to finally show me up, aren't you?" Izuku looks at Bakugo confused and replies, "What, no? I don't look down on you whatsoever, Kaken. Even after how you've treated me, I've done nothing but look up to you." All I want to do is show you that I'm not weak and beat you. Deku looks at Bakugo with an intensely serious on his face, taking his opponent aback before Kaken replies. Okay, fine. Then don't hold back or I'll kill you. Bakugo then uses a special move called Flash Grenade, blinding Izuku, and uses explosions to move in close to attack, but Izuku activities full cowl at 11%. Barley dodging an explosion and counters by punching Bakugo, forcing him back slightly. But Kaken launches a double explosion that hits Izuku and sends him flying towards a wall, but before he hits it, Deku manages to plant his feet on the wall and jumps forward back at Bakugo, landing a powerful left hook. Immediately after, Kaken grabs Izuku's arm and, using explosions to pick up speed, spins around and slams Izuku on the ground, where Bakugo then sets off a large explosion, sending Deku flying through a damaged wall. While Izuku struggles back to his feet, Bakugo begins to taunt him, saying, "What's the matter? I thought you wanted to prove how strong you are, or did I mishear you? It's clear you're still nothing but a pathetic loser, and I'm getting sick of you wasting my time." Izuku smirks and powers up to full cowl at 13% and moves forward. Bakugo tries to counter with an explosion, but Izuku narrowly sidesteps the blast and hits with a devastating uppercut, sending Kaken up, slamming into the ceiling, where he falls back down and uses an explosion to try and force Izuku back, which hits and knocks him a short distance away. Bakugo then blasts himself forward and tries to deal a finishing left hook, but Izuku catches his arm again and spins around multiple times, picking up more momentum and throws Kaken through a damaged wall. Deku then moves in and deals a gut punch, sending Bakugo through another damaged wall, finally knocking him out. Izuku stops using full cowl and sits down on the floor exhausted, and while looking at Bakugo says to himself, "I actually knocked you out, wow, I can't believe it. Oh, you're going to be so pissed when you wake up, haha." Izuku, after a minute of resting, gets up and uses some capture tape and secure Kaken. After he does, Izuku heads off, remarking how long the fight took, and tries to get a hold of Uraraka but isn't able to. When he eventually finds the fake bomb in Ida, he realizes that Uraraka was captured. Deku powers up his legs to 11% and rushes forward, but before he can actually do anything, a buzzer goes off with All Might yelling over the loudspeakers, "Time's up," and the heroes have failed to capture the bomb, so the villains win. This quickly stops Izuku in his tracks as he looks down in disappointment, while Ada gloats, still overacting like a villain. After a second goes by, Deku walks over to Uraraka and helps her get out of the capture tape, where she begins to apologize. "Sorry for getting captured, Deku. I wish I could have done more, but Ada was just too fast and I really couldn't keep up, especially when he went on the offensive." Izuku replies, "It's fine, he's a tough opponent, I know most would have trouble against him." Ada then says in an overdramatic villain voice, "That is correct, pathetic heroes. For I am the true embodiment of evil and all should fear me." Izuku and Uraraka look at Ada and start laughing at how serious he's trying to act, causing him to finally stop. They all then leave the training area and meet back up with the class. While Bakugo is taken to the infirmary to get patched up, Ada is named the MVP because he was able to capture Uraraka and kept the bomb safe, while everyone else's mistakes are pretty obvious, like Bakugo and Izuku causing damage to the building, which Momota's point out. Overall, though, every other match after Izuku's is fairly standard with nothing major happening. So let's skip ahead to when Bakugo wakes up in the infirmary with Buff All Might standing over him. Bakugo asks what happened, and All Might explains that he was knocked out during the fight with Izuku, but thanks to him prolonging the fight, his team was able to win. Kaken looks at All Might with an intense look of anger and jumps out of the bed shouting, "No, this isn't over, not by a long shot," and runs out of the room, where All Might immediately goes back to his weak form, coughing up blood as he says to himself, "How that young man sure has a temper. Hopefully he doesn't do something stupid. Maybe I should give Aizawa a heads up." Meanwhile, over in Class 1A, everyone is complimenting Izuku's performance during the exercise. Thanks to Deku having so much more control and actually knocking out Bakugo, he's pretty much impressed everyone, but after a few minutes, Bakugo storms through the door shouting, "Deku, I have a bone to pick with you," and moves towards Izuku when a few students like Ada, Uraraka, and Kirishima try to stop and calm him down, but he just pushes past them and slams his hands on Izuku's desk, yelling, "Deku, know that I don't accept this so-called win. It doesn't count unless I take you down myself, but don't think you're some badass because you knocked me out. I was holding back so I didn't collapse the whole building on top of us. Next time will be a proper fight, got it?" Izuku looks at Bakugo and smiles, saying, "Sure, but I won't lose. Expect me to be even stronger when we have our rematch." Bakugo yells back in response, "Don't even dream of beating me, you damn nerd, or I'll send you straight to hell. There's no way you'll surpass me, not in a billion years." And with that, Bakugo storms out of the class with his bag and heads home. While everyone asks what that was all about, and Deku replies, "Just Bakugo being Bakugo." Believe it or not, but that was probably the nicest conversation we've had in years. Izuku laughs a little along with a few of the other students, which is when Uraraka smiles at Deku and compliments him on how cool he is before heading off as well, leaving Izuku blushing profusely as everyone else eventually heads home, with Izuku being one of the last. Ending the second day at UA, we continue on the day after the combat exercises with Izuku as he walks to UA. After turning the